This is the World Satsanga on the 30th of September 2017 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show. And I continue to thank Kevin for the work he's doing in terms of his own work and broadcasting and putting some animation onto the work that I've done with the World Satsanga recording, and so he continues with that and does a good job. Interestingly enough, there's some piece of work that he's doing. He's filming something called they call us channelers. And if you look on the Indiegogo website and look up Kevin Moore, you'll find there's a chance to sponsor him if you wish. There's sponsorships from anything from $25 up to I think about $1,000 or even more actually. And he's providing a really good service there by showing how channeling works, who are channelers, what they do, and how they tap into the greater reality, so to speak. The good thing about this is that he's showing a broad brushstroke of different channeling types and individuals, so you can see the different types of channeling and the different types of entities that are contacted as a result of this. This work that Kevin's doing is going to end up being a documentary about channelers, so on no doubt it'll be on things like Discovery Channel and the Travel Channel and those sorts of things in the future. And I look forward to doing this. Incidentally, I was honoured to be the first person that Kevin interviewed, and I know he's got a long list of people he's going to interview, and he's going to go to the States to do it. So good luck, Kevin, and I'm looking forward to seeing this rather wonderful piece of work that's going to demonstrate to the rest of the world, the spiritual world, and the immersed incarnation world, that there is a greater reality beyond that which is seen and experienced through the five physical senses. Okay, so what are we going to do in this particular Satsanga? I'm going to give a short talk on what forgiveness is and how to implement it, and then we've got a whole group of questions from those dedicated souls who are looking towards trying to expand their own consciousness and understand the greater reality. So there's some questions based upon that. And then we're going to do an end of meet meditation, which is designed to create a higher frequency in your local environment. So in actual fact, this talk about what forgiveness is was, if you like, started off as a question. And although I was going to answer it as a question within the Satsanga, this Satsanga, I decided it was a good enough question. In fact, it was more than good enough to require it to be a short lecture. So it's something we all need to do in these days, because the frequencies are continuously dropping at the moment with all of the things that are going on around us, and so we need to really, look at ourselves, look at how we work, with a view to trying to work upon ourselves and forgive those who we consider have done wrong against us. So what is forgiveness? Well, forgiveness isn't just about saying I forgive you for doing something wrong. It's about forgiving the self as well for thinking the thoughts about somebody who's done us wrong. And it's about really deeply feeling that forgiveness. So forgiveness is a multi-layered thing that we have to achieve and work with. It's specifically to do with how we work between different souls and ourselves within the environment and the situations that we encounter within this particular incarnation. So if something happens, for instance, let's say we're trying to park our car in the car park, and then somebody else does the same thing and reverses into us, well, what do we do? I mean, most individuals become rather angry because they can foresee the problems they've got to go through in terms of arguing with insurance, trying to sort out putting the car into the garage to get it repaired, and the potential loss of no claims bonus if you have no claims bonus in whichever part of the world you're in, and the increase in that. And of course the time and effort required to sort those problems out. And so the instantaneous thing we're doing is getting angry because, one, our space is invaded, and two, we've got a lot of problems to sort out. But if there's a different reason for that accident, how do we figure it? Let's say that it's giving us the chance to work with somebody who's caused a problem accidentally, or hasn't seen us, or simply has their mind in somewhere else, and we just forgive them and say, that's okay, we've had an accident, let's just sort it out. But you forgive them for wrongdoing, and we just deal with the work afterwards. what we're doing there is we're removing the karmic link between us by forgiving somebody, by saying, "I forgive you for what you've done. Let's just work it out and work it out in a reasonable and spiritual and knowing manner." We help the other person understand that somebody is of a higher thought process and isn't working on the human material world thought process. So we show them by our own actions of being in forgiveness instantaneously and wanting to work things out on a really friendly level, that there's a better way of doing something. We're not always going into the attacker and defender mode. And so we remove the karmic link between ourselves and that other person, and we remove the anger between us, and we instill an example of how to think, behave and act as well. And so what we're doing is we're doing greater things. We are being a better being, we're demonstrating how to be that better being, and we're also removing or negating the opportunity for a karmic link to be created between us. So we're winning on all sides, really. The only thing we have to do is to sort out the material issues about getting the car repaired and filling out insurance claim forms, etc., etc. So forgiveness is about really totally and utterly forgiving somebody and forgetting about it. That's the issue. Most individuals say they forgive, but they don't forget. The thing is that although we say we forget, we don't, and we always think, oh, this person did this to me last time, or that person did that to me last time, or when this happened last time, this was a problem, or when this happened last time, that was a problem. So we're not actually forgiving, and we're not actually forgetting, and the lack of forgetfulness of the incident that was created, in whichever way it was, it reactivates this potential for a karmic link between us and the individual who maybe did us wrong in some small way or some major way, for instance. And I mean, the major ways can be you can use your own imagination to see what a major way could be like. But a small way can be something like, accidentally not giving you the right amount of change in a supermarket, for instance, or just banging into your car in a car park in a supermarket car park. So those are the sorts of things there. But the forgiveness, once forgotten, doesn't keep eating at us. So so forgiving is not all about saying the words and meditating on it. It's actually feeling that there's no link between us. It's feeling that there is no attachment to what's happened. There's no going over it in your mind. It's done and it's dusted, it's finished, and that's it. And so the implementation, and before I say the implementation, so it's all about feeling and being the forgiveness, not just saying the words and thinking that's done it. It's actually removing ourselves from all the thoughts, behaviours and actions that perpetuate the situation that we got into, or that we found ourselves into, that created that particular need to be in forgiveness. And also, don't forget, people who bump into us, for instance, or cause us problems, don't mean to either. They just happen to have their heads somewhere else. They're thinking about something else. They're probably stressed out about something. They're trying to work things out. They're just other souls like us, trying to deal with incarnate existence and do the best they can to evolve. Okay, so we have to think of it in those sorts of terms as well. So when we forgive and forget, we forgive and forget totally, irrespective of what's happened. And it's amazing how it unclutters your mind. It really, when you feel that there's no link between you and that which has happened, and it becomes insignificant, then we know we've got that particular piece of forgiveness sorted, and it's robust. Now, in terms of implementing it, there's a number of different ways in which we do. We can actively say to the person, "I forgive you for this," and once we've dealt with what we've got to do with the interaction between us to sort something out, it's forgotten, and it won't come back to us. Then that's the way to do it, the way to implement it. You actually speak to them. You can meditate on it and say, "I forgive this person irrevocably. I totally forget about any future thoughts, rerunning, as it were, going over the real, the mental and physical and visual reel of what's happened, again, seeing if you could do it better or if you could have interacted with them better. It's all done and dusted. We did the best we could on that point in time, so to speak. And so we implement it by really feeling the forgiveness, by it being gone. And one of the best ways of thinking about it is, well, will this cause you a problem in 100 years' time? Well, for most of us, 100 years' time, we'll probably be on our next incarnation. So it won't matter in the slightest, really. That memory of having our car hit in the car park won't matter in the slightest in 100 years' time. So why should we clutter our minds and our experience and our beingness in this particular few seconds or few minutes? Well, we shouldn't. We should just let it happen and it's gone. So one of the ways is to put it right into the future. The other way is to actually say to the person you forgive them, you look them in the eye and say, I forgive you. This is just an accident. It could have happened to anybody, and that's the way to think about it. There's no blame involved. If we start to try to blame somebody, that's not forgiving it or forgetting. Okay, we have to remove the blame. There is no blame. It's just an occurrence. Nobody's to blame. It just happened. And we have to think of these things also in terms of, this is a lesson in how to interact with somebody in a karma-free way, without getting to the point where, for want of a better word, we are mastering incarnation. We're in the physical, but not of the physical. Something happens to us, we let it go. And this is the good way of doing it. As an example, a few months ago, I was driving my car at night time up a particularly narrow country lane, and another person came down by me, and he was clearly trying hard not to hit my car, but he ended up rubbing his whole car across the whole length of the side of my car. We exchanged papers, and off we went. I had a look at my car, and there was really very little wrong with it. When I saw it in the morning, the car was slippery because it had been raining, and a little bit of mud and dirt on there acted as a lubricant. So when the car moved past mine, on the rubbing strips on his side and on his doors and panels, it actually didn't do anything other than a little couple of scratches on the rear wheel arch. So that required a little bit of polish, and it was finished, done and dusted. So there was no issues there. When I found out later that the phone number he gave me wasn't a real phone number, you can imagine what thoughts went through my mind there if I had to claim on the insurance. But at the end of the day, I thought, well, I don't need to claim on the insurance, and he was trying his best to move out of the way. But if he felt that he needed to give a false phone number, or maybe I took it down wrong, that's another thing to think about. Maybe I took the phone number down wrong. And so therefore, again, we have to forgive ourselves for thinking in the negative, for thinking in the way that, the worst case scenario. So forgiveness is forgiveness of self as well. So we have to implement self-forgiveness for thinking wrong of somebody. My initial reaction straight away was, he's had this accident, he didn't want to be claiming on his insurance, he's given us the wrong phone number, but maybe I took it down wrong. And this is the thing we have to think about. And if I took it down wrong, that's my fault. Okay, something to think about in the future. Make sure you see things properly or hear things properly and question them and go over them again, and then you get the right information. So I then have to forgive myself as well. So it's all about being in forgiveness of self on a deep level, so that you don't go over the same thing again. I wish I'd taken his phone number properly, or I wish I'd questioned him, or I wish I'd given him a phone call there and then to check the phone number's right. You don't go over that routine. That's just a downward spiral. You just think, that's what I should do next time, and that's it. And you let yourself go, and you forgive yourself. So it's about release and not going over the scenario again, and not blaming a culture or a person or a way of being or interacting, or any way where there is a way of getting the negative aspect of this forgiveness into the thought processes. We have to think about forgetting what's happened, and that is the way to forgive. We forgive the person, we forgive ourselves, we forgive the situation, we forgive the scenario, and we forget about it, and we move on. We've got enough to do in this incarnation without going through lots and lots and lots of different things and how we could have done better. We can do better. Next time we get into this situation, we will do better. There's no point in mulling over it round and round and round on a random basis all the time. So that's really what forgiveness is. It's total forgiveness and forgetfulness and forgiveness of self as well. And the need to completely divorce ourselves as if we've had our memory wiped on what's happened. Okay, so let's go on to the questions now. We've got quite a lot of questions. I'm going to go through them in the order that I received them. Okay, and this is from WP. And the question is, from the biblical metaphor, I am the vine, ye are the branches. Can we think of the vine as our source entity and the branches as our true energetic selves? And if so, would source entity be source entity without the true energetic selves? E.g., would a tree be a tree without its branches? Carrying that metaphor on further, are the leaves on the trees like those who are in the incarnate state as aspects of our true energetic selves? If so, would source entity be source entity without the incarnate aspects? E.g., would a tree be a tree without its leaves? The thought process here is absolutely right, but if you think about it, if Source didn't project parts of its consciousness into and its sentience into our true energetic selves, it would still be Source. And it's still Source now. It's just that there are certain parts of it which are individualized. And so the vine is individualized as well. So it's not that that Source wouldn't be Source without our true energetic self. It's Source anyway. So irrespective of whether the sentience associated with Source is individualized or separated out, or whether it is in total communion or all collectively back as a whole, it's still Source. There's no difference. It's just that there are certain parts of it doing different things and different roles to be able to experience, learn, and evolve faster. But this particular question is good. Okay. A related question, maybe a separate question, is a true energetic self, and by the way, you can still use the words God's head, over soul, or higher self to explain the same thing. It's that part of us which is still disincarnate, that part of us which is the bigger part of us, okay? So is a true energetic self that creates an evil incarnate aspect of itself, i.e. a terrorist who thinks of itself as perfectly fine to excuse others, also vibrating at the same evil frequency, and can only overcome that state through successive incarnate aspects, accruing evolutionary content whereby eventually it sees the error of its ways? My understanding is the true energetic self is the overall evolutionary level as a result of the sum of the work that itself and its aspects have accrued. And if one of those particular aspects is taking on the role of an evil murderer or a terrorist, then the experience of that is also evolutionary in some way, shape or form, even though it develops this thought process of it's fine to excuse others, and it enjoys it sometimes. So there's evolution there, even though it's, from a human perspective, wrongdoing. And this is the conundrum. As human beings, we see this as completely abhorrent. And how can a caring, loving Source allow this to happen? But it's part of the yin and the yang. It's about understanding the total picture of everything. That we need to experience everything and be that. We need to be the king. We need to be the pauper. We need to be the terrorist. We need to be that person's being terrorized. We need to be the hero. We need to experience all of these things before we can have a robust experiential experience of all the environments and all the potential roles that we can play whilst incarnate. So the true energetic self doesn't accrue any negativity associated with it, although sometimes the ego, this is the temporary personality that's created as a function of incarnation, does need to be, shall we say, isolated for a moment sometimes, or certainly the energies associated with being in that particular role means that the aspect needs to be isolated for a certain period of time to neutralise any potential negative thought processes that may, or energies or low frequency energy is a better way of saying it, that could be transferred back into another incarnation. Okay. So the next part of this question is, if source entity created our true energetic selves and consequently incarnated aspects for the purpose of accruing evolutionary content, or what I say, to make known the unknown, it seems that the experience here on Earth is a supreme struggle that source entity is having within itself, as its creation struggles to overcome and rise above the human depravity. I wouldn't say source entity is struggling, because it's experiencing everything concurrently, and everything that has been experienced is being experienced, or everything that will be experienced is also being experienced. It's more that we as human beings have difficulty in understanding the bigger picture surrounding it. And so making the unknown known is part of that. And that although it is very hard work to be in this particular frequency level on this particular planet, it is without doubt a very difficult scenario for us to be in, from both our interaction with our environment and others, and also our ability to control ourselves, and also understand a greater reality as well. So I think we are probably taking on the struggle as smaller aspects of our true energetic selves, on behalf of our true energetic selves, and therefore on behalf of Source. So we're taking on the struggle of understanding it from a human perspective, although when we disincarnate, it would be totally understandable. Okay, good. Well, thank you for those questions. Next one's from MT. When there are beings who are utterly lost on their path and have completely forgotten why they are here, that they have to continue and accrue negative karma beyond return, does the curator, this is all Source, do anything about it? It seems that this group of beings who go further and further down in frequency whenever their back is growing. So basically, this is saying that there's lots of entities who are getting more and more addicted to or attracted to lower frequency existence. This is certainly true initially for those aspects who are just encountering the incarnation on Earth, because it's very difficult being here, and other lower frequency environments and lower frequency vehicles as well. There is no such thing as a lost soul, though, or a lost aspect. All aspects and souls will eventually start to be able to work on themselves, and will turn the corner and start to increase their frequencies and come back to a higher level of frequency. But they will have accrued a lot of experiential and evolutionary content as a result of that. So it's worth knowing that, in essence, although this number of individuals is growing, and maybe it seems to be growing because there's a lot of backfill people at the moment. For those of you who understand the comment about backfill people, you can look at one of my lectures about who we are and how we incarnate. But basically, backfill people are individuals who have a different genre of sentience than us, and they are experiencing individualized free will for the first time. So they would be struggling, and they would, without doubt, become attracted to the light of low frequency thoughts, behaviors and actions, and sensory stimulus associated with being on this particular planet, and the frequencies associated with it. But even they will eventually start to rise as well. So it just takes a lot of event space, so to speak, a lot of time. Okay, the next question is from NS. And the first question is, who animates all the bodies, vessels that are not associated with the Source? Because there are an awful lot of people on the planet. All bodies are animated by an aspect or a shard. And there are a lot of aspects and shards because there's a lot of true energetic selves. So there is nothing which isn't associated with our Source. Although, having said that, there are the odd incarnates, such as Om, or hybrid Om, or non-captive Om and captive Om, who are not specifically as part of Source, but they are nevertheless working with the environment created by our Source. But those are very far and few between. In terms of, there are one or two other individuals who are from other Source entities who are literally just here for one or two incarnations and are protected from the potential accrual of low frequency addictions, thoughts and behaviours, i.e. karma. So in general they come from somewhere, and they're not, but mostly 99.999% of those who incarnate are individualizations of some denomination of the sentience of source, whether it's from the Trinity self as an aspect, or from the aspect as a shard. Okay. Next question is, this might sound weird, but I'll ask anyway. Is there energy associated with people in the movies? As in, they kind of stay in the movies forever, and I know that don't actually, and I know they are not really there, but I have to have this feeling which there's something stays imprinted. So are they actors as such, being drawn back into the physical after they die because of this? I guess the same applies to photographs, as if there was this fear of photographs being captured by the soul by a person back in the old days. No, there's no. If you like, there's the charisma associated with those individuals who were incarnate at the time and whose image has been captured either on celluloid or digitally. So there's the charisma there, there's the beingness about them which is maintained, but there's no actual aspects associated with them as such. It's just that the charisma's there, and the if you like, the personality of them, for those of us who know these people, stays there as well. So there's a bit of that there, but it's nothing to do with any sentience at all. Okay. And the third question is, do custodians incarnate as well? If I look at the word custodian, I think of curators. I think that's what this particular devotee of knowing the greater reality is talking about. A guide and a helper can manifest a form close to the incarnate state, but not actually be incarnate. And sometimes, on the very rare occasion, a guide may actually incarnate, but that's very, very rare. So that's not something that they do, because they are, for want of a better word, not in the evolutionary cycle in the way we are. They accrue evolution, but they're not part of the evolutionary cycle. They're in the service industry, so to speak. But a curator, in general, the curators, those individual souls or aspects, or true energetic souls, whichever you want to call them, who are maintaining the structure of the multiversal environment from an evolutionary perspective, and other things as well. They don't incarnate at all. Although, again, there has been the odd individual who has swapped roles and gone into the evolutionary cycle, and sometimes they stay there and sometimes they come out again, just for experiential purposes. And there are the odd custodian the curator, sorry, who is sort of close to an incarnate group of individuals. For instance, there might be elementals working on the environment that we're in, and they basically may manifest a form close to an incarnate state because they want to experience that which they've worked on from an environmental perspective. So it's not really true to say that they incarnate, but they do sometimes incarnate, but not in the frequency or for the reasons that we incarnate. Okay, that's a good question. Thank you very much. Next one's from ME, and these thoughts and questions are in reference to the AND dialogues, chapters 11.3.1, termination junctions, and chapter 12, to help the guides and helpers. And there's a slight preamble to this, so I'll read the preamble out first. A related side note, information for me, but not necessarily intended for listeners or readers. I've said it now, so you're going to have a listen. The person who sent these questions was ill through June and July, and had a high fever for a few weeks and spiked quite high in terms of temperature, and with many bizarre symptoms. And it felt like one of the most terrible times that I can recall. And having rarely used Western medicine, this time it was different. The person who's asked the questions broke down and had to be taken to the doctor, and the blood and had some work done to her, medical work, because blood didn't look good. Okay, it was reflecting how horrible that person felt. there was one night when the questioner said they may not awaken the next morning, and it sounds very melodramatic, but the questioner thought they were really going to slip into a coma, but that questioner was really calm and welcomed it in that way. And I thought about the fact that I might be in a termination point in my life, and what it would take to be ready to end this particular incarnation. The commentary goes, I've not yet read this part about termination junctures yet in the book of the Dialogues, and certainly you might have discussed it in prior Satsangas, but I realised that this was not an original idea to me, but also not from reading it in the Dialogues. So it's obviously something that's been there anyway, and people have understood. Now that I'm well, I'll start reading the Dialogues again. I'm picking up where I left off many months ago in chapter 11, separating from the Trinity itself. And it was fortuitous that my next section was the one where Anne discusses the termination junctures, which I was already wondering about my own recent illness, as if such things exist. And they do exist. Termination junctures are parts within the life plan where, in essence, we have the opportunity to leave the incarnation without accruing evolutionary death, for instance, or having to come back to finish things off. It's a point where we've done enough to be able to move on and move out of the incarnation, or we can elect to stay here and get more evolutionary content. And I mean, I think I've been through about, I can remember at least 3 termination junctures, 2 quite serious ones actually. One was a potentially silly one to do with diving, but the other 2 involved cars, one being knocked over by a car and one being in quite a serious car accident. So there's 2 major termination junctures there, and one that could have happened had I not been more controlled. So I think I've had 3 there, and I'm just thinking there's a 4th one. I can't. Yes, I think there may be a 4th one as well, very young in life, but they're there, and they're the sort of thing that we can choose to depart this particular incarnation without losing any of the work we've done, or threatening any of the work that we need to do. Okay. So the questions are as follows. In the discussion about termination junctures, it was mentioned that the aspect cannot action termination junctures on its own, but it requires the help of the guide and helpers. That's at page 210. What happens if an aspect is a termination juncture, trying to terminate, but the guides are not, i.e. they're not helping? Does the aspect linger in limbo, waiting for the guides to work things out? I'm thinking about lingering illnesses or folks who stay in comas prior to terminating. Usually when we linger, it's because we have a strong desire to stay incarnate. It's nothing to do with not having the help from the guides, because the termination junction is an agreement point. The only thing where we decide to come back is quite instantaneous. You know, it's like a case of, yes, okay, it's here, but I'm not going to use it. But it doesn't take a long time to decide that. It's almost instantaneous. So things like comas and lingering illnesses are really something to do with our desire to stay and not let it go of the physicality. Okay, so it's a slightly different thought process there. If there's a termination junction and we're going to use it, the guides and helpers know about it, and they're doing their best to make it work in the way it's supposed to happen. If we're lingering, it's because we don't want to go, and we have a fear of losing our physicality, because the ego is trying its hardest to stay incarnate, so to speak. Next part of this is based upon chapter 11.3.1 in the Dialogues. The roles of the guides and helpers seems critical in successful utilisation of an incarnation. They coordinate our ability to exit via termination junctions early, or extend our incarnation duration to maximise evolutionary content. What ways do you suggest that we as incarnates can increase our communication skills with the guides and helpers so that we can be more aware of the roles we need to fulfil? Is it possible to read our life plans? I like to know where I'm going, so I like to use a map. We can communicate with our guide and helpers. We'd have to meditate on them and ask for guidance as to which way to go. But they give us help with our life plan on a regular basis as it happens. They give us intuition, gut feelings, desires, thoughts, needs. They change the way people interact with us to make us change direction. So basically, they are already in control of our life plan and how we're working with our life plan. They're very much in control of who and what we are and how we're doing it. So all we need to do is be more aware of the things that happen outside of what we would call our expectations, including our own thoughts, our own gut feelings, and how others interact around us. So that's how it's best to understand it. But also, if we knew all of our life plan, there'd be no point in being here, would there? So, although it's nice to know where you're going, in real terms, if we knew where we were going, there'd be no point in doing the incarnation, because there would be no spontaneity involved with the experience, for instance. There'd be no dealing with it as it arrives, because we will have already dealt with it. We'll have rehearsed our response. So it's not really wise to understand the life plan, because we start to try to second guess things, and actually we can get the interactions with others and their environments wrong sometimes, because we don't understand what's happening. Now, I've seen a number of bits and snapshots of my life plan, and although I've seen them, sometimes they've been in front of me when I expected them, and sometimes they haven't. So it's trying to double think and use the life plan as a way to move forwards and increase the way we interact with this particular incarnation is not wise. The whole point of it is that we do it blind, and or not so blind as the case may be, and do the best we can. And that's how we accrue our evolutionary content. So overall, the next bit is overall how to tell the difference between events and situations that occur in our lives that are part of our life plan, and to those things that are there to push us back into our life plan, as opposed to those things that are generated from the karma we create through addiction to the control of the ego. When things are happening without effort, they're seamless, and we're working through them, we're doing a job, and we're doing a good job, and we're managing to interact with the environment and those individuals within the environments, then we know we're on our life plan. When things happen suddenly that are completely in variance to the direction we think we're going into, but change of direction, that's when the guide and helpers consider that we're well off plan, so to speak. So they drop bombs in front of us sometimes, and the bomb can come from somebody else. Okay. And those that are generated from karma or addiction in the control of the ego are generally repetitive things. There are those things that we experience again and again and again, and the experience gets harder and harder and harder in terms of how it affects us. So, excuse me, those are the ways in which we understand the difference between being in the life plan, which is usually seamless, things that are being put in front of us to push us back on track, which are usually significant changes that we don't see coming, and repetitive things of a similar or same nature are when we're experiencing the karmic loops, so to speak. Okay, so that's how we can understand those. Let's have a look at the next part here. Again, more from the Dialogues. Thank you for these comments and questions from the Dialogues. I'm really pleased actually, because this book is doing well, and the information within it is doing well, and I'm just happy that it is. For me, it's a wonderful thing to be seeing people interrogating it and asking questions. It's fantastic. Okay, so from the Dialogues, chapter 11.1 to 11.2, regarding the incarnation life plan and the logistics of when and where of incarnating. It was stated that a 12-point plan is laid out, which does not include the human body or the family that will be used by the incarnation. So how can the family not play an active role in the 12-point plan for incarnation, at least as actors involved in the achievement for these points? Well, basically, what we look for is a fit. Okay. The plan is about what we want to experience, and the depth of which we want to experience it in. once you've got this, we then look for a fit that is within certain parameters going to achieve that 12 month point plan. So we then look at the environments that we can go into, what is currently being played out by certain incarnates, the locations, the environments, the personalities involved, and the potentials for the 12-point plan to be, for want of a better word, acted out in a reasonable way. And so then we find it. So it's a bit like having a stencil, which is the or one picture, which is the plan, and then we overlay it in various different locations around the world or around other worlds within the physical universe, and we're looking to see the best fit that we can achieve with what's there. Next part of the question is, do family members often have roles to play in breaking links to karma? I'm thinking about being related to difficult people that you are either born into or marry into. Yes, sometimes. Sometimes they're there to help break links to them as well, not just breaking links to us. If there's a particular link that needs to be severed, and it's significant or it's a necessary link to help us both move on, then there can be direct interaction by being a close friend, a relative of some sort, a partner, okay, or a business partner. So these things can happen and are planned into it as well. So this is all part of the fit, getting the 12-point plan for incarnation fitting with something that's there. And this is where we have all these individuals who are interacting with us, our guide and helpers, and the guide and helpers of other individuals, all working together before we eventually incarnate. It's a massive planning process. And then we think we're doing it on our own. We have individualised free will. We have it up to a certain point, of course, and that's it. So it's very well planned out. All we have to do is do it. But obviously, because of our detachment and our lack of bandwidth in terms of our communicative ability to communicate with our higher selves, we don't tend to see what's coming, and so we have to work in the dark a lot. But it's all there, played, so we can work on where we're going. It's a bit like planning out a game of chess. Think of it that way. We've got a plan to use. All we have to do is do it, and hope that the other people are also on the same wavelength with their own life plan and how they're supposed to interact with us as well. Next point is not including the human vehicle or family in the 12-point plan justifying incarnations suggests that there are incidental, it seems. I'll start again. Not including the human vehicle or family in the 12-point plan justifying incarnations suggests that these are incidental. Yet it seems that it is also through the human body itself and the family members that karma is worked out and or created as part of the life plan. That's right. It's how we interact, it's how we work out with our scenarios. It's how we work with ourselves and others, and we're able to work with it and move forwards. Okay. It seems that the family itself has a karmic history and can provide the incarnate with many potential fulfillments of life plan events depending upon the goals of the life plan. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we can accrue karma as well if we're not careful. So the individuals that we choose to be with are very important to us and how we do it. Okay. Point 11 of the 12-point plan lists that one must understand how many different interactions are required by other aspects and what they are. So how can a human vehicle and the family not play the same roles at this point? Can you clarify the points of family as they relate to the incarnate life plan, particularly those we seem to find ourselves with the difficult ones? Basically, it's really about understanding how the people, not the family as such, it's the people who are creating the family that we need to interact with, and how they're interacting with themselves as well, can work with the overall blueprint of, or should I say stencil of the 12-point plan, so to speak. I mean, the word family probably confuses a little bit here. Think of the individuals as being a group of people who are put into a certain way. They're incarnated in a certain way which is more efficient for them and us to work out certain pieces of karma or to work with certain pieces of karma as well. So, in effect, it's how best to fit each other together. And maybe it is in the family or maybe it's in a group of friends as well. So really, it's not about being in a family. It's about being with a group of individuals who we've planned to work with. And it may be that the best way to put them together is in a family, or it may be the best way to put them together is in a group of work colleagues, or a group of individuals that we interact with from for instance, an outside participation perspective, like hobbies or any other pastimes that we have. So try to divorce the word family from it and think of it in terms of a group of individuals who are working together, and that's the best way to collect them together. Okay, there's a couple of questions. Thank you very much, ME, for those. It's a very deep set of questions, and I hope I've answered them in some way, shape, or form, in a robust way, or at least in a more enlightening way than having no question answered would be. This is from US, and it's we're getting quite okay, we've got a few more questions, that's all, we should be okay. Here are a couple of quick questions for our Satsanga. When our pets are dreaming, vocalizing and moving their limbs as if running as such, where do they go? Is it the astral levels? As with us, we also do astral travelling, and so do our animal friends as well. And so they can go to the astral levels, which are levels 4 to 7, or they can simply be not going anywhere and really sort of the body is just twitching, for instance, as a result of just randomised neurons bouncing around the brain. But there are times when the physical body does, for want of a better word, try to mirror the movements and the actions that ourselves and the animals are experiencing, whilst the aspect or the soul is out of the body. And so, depending upon how good the link is, depends upon how much sort of feedback the body gives in terms of copying what's being experienced. So basically, it could be anywhere. It could be astral levels, or it could be other locations within the physical universe if they've got a role to do as well. Next one is, what is the purpose of dreaming for animal entities? Do they process their daily experiences in the dream state? Well, dreams are really just translations of what we're experiencing when our sentience or our soul is outside of the body. And so there's no real such thing as dreaming as such. It's basically some form of translations to what we've experienced. Sometimes we have no dreams, sometimes we have really bizarre dreams, sometimes we have really understandable dreams. And so we call them dreams. They're basically interpretations or translations of what's being experienced by the soul whilst the body is sleeping. And that's the same thing for all incarnate entities, whether it's animals or human beings. Okay. And again, this answers the next bit. Or is it another level of experience for their soul extensions that they seem so animated? Yeah, well, basically, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's basically their physical body is mirroring what's being experienced because the link's there. It's like an autonomous, unwilling response that's happening because there is still communication between the soul and the body's just animating itself simply because it's doing something that is similar to that which is being experienced by the soul or aspect in a different environment whilst the body is asleep. Right, next question is quite a deep one, I think. Would I please tell us more about the so-called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? What about the possibility of bipolar disorder coexisting with ADHD? Well, basically, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is something that happens with people who are autistic or people who are a higher frequency and are struggling to communicate properly with the rest of us. That being, they're expecting to have levels of communication because they're broadcasting on various different frequencies, and they're not receiving those communications back, so they get frustrated. So, for instance, if we communicate on one frequency and one level of type of communication, such as just the verbal response, but they're communicating on an emotional, telepathic, and other frequential methods, and they're not getting them back, not getting the answers back, but they can see that there's somebody there who should answer, they get frustrated. So that's why there's like a hyperactivity or disorder or attention deficit disorder, because they get frustrated with what's there. They can't see the point in communicating with us or doing something when we're not listening to them, and that's why they get frustrated. Bipolar disorder is again the possibility of having two souls in the same body, who are, one is working sometimes with animating the body, and sometimes it's not. It is quite possible to have them both together, because if they're both quite high frequency souls, and when either of them is in control of the body, for instance, animating the body, then they would, both of them, expect to have communication that's not coming to them. They can see people that they're interacting with, they're broadcasting to them, but they're ignoring them in their minds. And so ADHD can also exist with individuals who are bipolar, i.e. they have potential for two bodies, or two souls in the same body, so to speak. And that's one of the things to think about, is it can be there at the same time. Most adults with ADHD don't just have ADHD. 70–80% also have disorders such as major depression, bipolar disorder, and anxiety. And they substance abuse, according to a study published in Biomed Central Medicine. The substance abuse and other abuses is because they are trying to get out of the body, basically. They've had enough, or they're trying to dumb down their own communicative senses. So, in essence, they're trying to turn off certain communicative methods so that they can operate like us. So that's why they sometimes do substance abuse or smoke or take alcohol, for instance. And the depression and the anxiety is because they're not being heard. So bipolar is a separate function, but you can be both, because although they're separate functions, if you've got two souls who are higher frequency and are communicating on many different channels to us, but we're not responding back, they will become depressed because they feel they're being ignored. They get anxious because they feel they're being ignored and can't do anything right, because they can't get the information back in the way they're expecting it. And the bipolar bit is simply that there's two souls doing a similar sort of thing, for instance, and both have got control of the body. So it's almost like like having many personalities, but it is the same sort of thing. It's just the one is more one is more depressed versus one is more joyful. One is more sad versus one is more joyful. Okay, I hope that helps. It tends to run in families and continues into adulthood in half the cases. There's a sense of being overwhelmed, having no filters, always being on edge. Yeah, that's because they're communicating, and some people communicate with them, but on a different level. And sometimes they pick up lots of other bits and pieces that they don't want to pick up as well. So their senses are all open. They're not getting the information to come through from the people they think should be able to communicate with them, but they are sometimes getting it through from other people who maybe they don't want to know. Okay. And also they can be, as I said before, they're higher frequency individuals. Because as I said in an interview with Julia Cannon in 2015, they're advanced beings. They're like the indigo, crystal, rainbow children, all hybrids. And so they do get, again, frustrated because they're communicating on like 12 channels and we're only communicating on one. And the information that we give back isn't the information that they expect back. And so it's very difficult. It's a bit like us communicating, saying something in English, and then somebody communicating with us in Chinese. It doesn't work, does it? We get frustrated because we can't make ourselves known, and the other person on the other side doesn't understand what we're saying either. So this is another way of thinking about it. The next question is, what's the best approach to treatment? Medication, psychotherapy, behaviour modification, or coping with life? Basically, the best approach to treatment is put them with like types of individuals. People who are experiencing this should stay together, because they will be able to communicate with each other properly. Person speaking English will be able to speak English. person speaking Chinese will speak Chinese. Person speaking or communicating on 12 different frequency levels will be able to communicate with somebody on 12 different frequency levels. And so this is the thing about it. The therapy is behaviour modification based upon being introduced to and working with other individuals who are experiencing the same as them. Then they'll be able to communicate with each other, and they'll realise that they're not alone, and they'll start to operate properly, so to speak. Okay. And that was a series of questions asked because one of US's readers, who US has also got a blog, by the way, which is very, very, very useful and very well supported, asked a question about this particular answer. Okay. Last one is from JM, and it's saying that, so we all have a true sentient self as well as a true energetic self. Can we or should we address either one directly in meditation? Is there a difference in knowing how to relate to them? I think of my true energetic self as Big Joe since I'm Little Joe, but I don't know how to conceive my TSS. I would work with them as the same thing, basically. The thing to understand is that really it's to do with recognising it's all you. So it's not as if they're separate. The TSS is separate from the TS. It's that they are both the same thing. They're both part of what we are. They're both part of our higher selves, our bigger selves. So you can still think of them as being Big Joe, for instance, or Big Guy, or Big Brian, or Big Mary. It's just that one part of it is to do with the sentience, so to speak, whereas the other part is to do with the energetic supporting the sentience. So it's the same thing. It's not something which is separate. It's the same thing. Just think of it in terms of the part of you which animates the energies, and therefore it's the thinking part, it's the being part, it's the creating part. That's the way to think about it. Does my TSS have multiple TSs or just one? It feels like just one. It's always just one. There's it's something where it's like a body, isn't it? There's a brain which animates the body, but then there's muscles that allow the animation to work. But to allow the brain to continue and the muscles to continue, there must be a life support system, which we have as being lungs, hearts, liver, kidneys, a venous system. So it is just one. They go together. They're just two sort of separate thought processes of the same thing, really. So if we think of them as just being one, then that's the best way to look at it. And there's another thing here. I can't remember which book this is part of, by the way, but it says the question is: the trees approve. Does all of nature function in this way? Trees, flowers, the wind and clouds, blades of grass, etc. And so let me sort of retrace the step. This particular question would be relevant to things that we do that affect the environment in a positive way, and therefore the flora and the fauna would be thankful for it. And in real terms, every part of the environment that has a certain level of sentience associated with it, or at least intelligence. And so you can think of it in terms of, yes, every function of nature is grateful for and is abhorrent of things that we do while we're here. So if we do things well, the whole thing glistens. If we do things wrong, it sort of goes a bit grey. So we have to think of it in terms of everything we do that's positive for the environment, like we're helping things grow, we're nurturing things, propagating things, making things better, then the environments, the trees, the grass, the bushes, the flowers, the flora, other fauna as well, for instance, animals, and part of the ecostructure, would be grateful for it and would approve of what's going on. If we started, set trees alight, for instance, and there's no reason for us setting trees alight, they wouldn't approve of it because it's reducing the ability to clean and scrub the air, remove the carbon dioxide and reintroduce oxygen. So nature approves of and disapproves of, in totality, what we do while we're here. It approves of us doing good things towards nature. It disapproves of things we're doing against nature. Okay, so that's a good set of questions from everybody. Thank you very, very much. And what we're going to do now is the last very short meditation as it happens, meditation to create high frequency in our local environment. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is to close your eyes. If you've got a straight back chair or you're in a straight back chair, sit with your back straight and uppermost, feet flat on the ground, hands palm uppermost on your upper thighs, eyes closed, and your closed eye vision focused on the location of your third eye. And what I want you to do is to visualize your local environment all around you. Doesn't matter how big it is or how small it is, just imagine it's all around you and you can see every part of it. Now let's visualize ourselves zooming out of that area so that our environment that we want to raise the frequency of gets smaller and smaller. So it's a bit just like flying up from the surface of the Earth going towards being in orbit. When we get to a height where the environment that we want to raise the frequencies of is about the size of a football, or about the size of a tray that we take our breakfast into, that we take our breakfast or our lunch from the kitchen to the dining table. Okay? When it's about that size, I want you to think of it as staying that size, and then isolate it. So all you see is that piece of the environment that you want to raise the frequency of, being the size of a football or the size of this dinner tray. There's nothing else around it anymore. There's no earth, there's no continent, there's no city, for instance. There's no country. It's just that part that you want to raise the frequency of. It could be a country, but the country would need to be the same size as a football or a dinner tray. I want you to feel that you can take hold of this football, this dinner tray, and carry it with you. So you're carrying it like you're carrying a model. Think of it now as a model of your environment. I also want you to visualize or use your mentally spoken words to do the same thing. That slightly to your left is a lift. This is a lift that you can use to go up the frequencies. So I want you to walk towards your lift and press the lift call button to open the door. Move inside the lift and turn around and let the lift doors close. So in your hands you've got your model of the environment or the location that you want to increase the frequencies of. And I want you to press a number, let's say 20. So we're going to raise the frequencies of a location on Earth, that's the third frequency level, and we're going to go to the 20th level. So the lift, when we press the number 20, rises up from the first level to the second, and the third, and the fourth, and then gets faster to 6, and 8, and 10, and 12, and 14, and 16, slows down at 18, and 19, and 20. Now I want you to open your lift door and just to visualise that there's a little walkway from your lift, like a jetty coming out from the beach into the sea, or from the beach of a lake into a lake. And you can walk out of your lift door onto this jetty or this walkway, and you bring this model, this representation, this small representation of the area or the location or the environment that you want to increase the frequency of with you. And I want you to hold it out in front of you and let it absorb the frequencies associated with this new environment that it's in. And so it itself starts to absorb higher frequencies, rising up from the first frequency to the second frequency to the third frequency that it's part of. And then it starts to absorb the higher frequencies and goes to the fourth and the fifth, sixth and seventh, eighth and ninth and 10th. And it starts to glow a bit as it gets higher frequency. It starts to glow in comparison to what it was. It's glowing silvery, whitish, goldish colour is a function of it increasing in frequency. So it starts to absorb more frequency. Now it goes to 11 and 12, 13 and 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and normalises at 20. In essence, we've also done the same thing. Our bodies in the lift have also started to absorb those frequencies. So we've elevated ourselves to the 20th level as well. So with this image or this model of the environment that you're in, that you want to raise that frequency in front of you, now normalised and stabilised, it's caught up with the frequencies of this other environment it's in. I want you to put something around it. Think of it being put in a bag, or a transparent bag that is, transparent plastic bag, or in a like a goldfish environment, you know, where you've got the four walls and the base as being glass, goldfish tank, or simply a force field around it. Think of it being protected by a force field around it. Wherever it is, either in this transparent bag or in the fish tank with the top on, again a glass top, or a force field around it. Whichever you're visualising, this enclosure will keep that location at the higher frequency. You need to have this enclosure around it, this force field or this case around it, or this bag, to keep the frequencies within the environment that you brought up there within it still, so they don't normalise back down again. So you're creating a local environment for it by putting a bag around it, or by putting a fish tank around it, or by putting a force field around it. So now I want you to bring that model or that image back with you into your lift. Let your lift doors close. And press the button with the number 0. And the lift drops down from 20 to 19, 18, gets faster at 16, 14, 10, 8, 6, 4, slows down at 2, and 1, and 0. Let your lift door open and move out, and you find yourself at this higher vantage point where the location that you wanted to raise in frequency has, to all intents and purposes, got a hole there. because you've taken away this environment and you've taken it to a higher frequency. So the model that you've got, or the image that you've got, that's contained within its own environment of the 20th level frequency, just place it in the hole that's left when you took it away to the higher frequency. And therefore that location now, although it's in the three frequencies of the Earth, is now locally at the 20th frequencies. So let's move down, let's zoom down, let's start to go down towards the Earth, so that we are now on the Earth, and we can step into that environment, and that environment is at the 20th frequency. So the bag, or the force field, or the fish tank, so to speak, whichever way you do it, protecting and maintaining that higher frequency, stays around that location, and that location remains at the higher frequency. And so things may not be the same for those people who work with that frequency or move in and out of it. They will also be affected by that higher frequency. You'll notice that things feel lighter in that location now. Things feel brighter. Things feel much more coherent. Things happen faster. You've taken a location, moved it up to a frequency level, exposed it to that frequency level, put an environment around it to protect it at that frequency level, brought it back down to the original frequency level, and with its protection around it, it maintains the frequency level that it's absorbed at a higher frequency. And so things that interact with that frequency level will be affected by that higher frequency level as well. So you can do this to any size, whether it's your house, a park, a city, or a country, or even the Earth if you wished. Just make sure it's the size of a football or something similar in size of a model. Okay, so it's a very simple thought process, very simple meditation to create a higher frequency in your local environment. So that's the end of this particular Satsanga for the 30th of September 2017 in conjunction with the Moore Show. And thank you very much for listening to the Satsanga. Thank you for your questions. I'll apologise if I've had to read some of the questions out more than once, or if some of my reading wasn't particularly accurate. But nevertheless, I've done my best at the time. And the questions were very, very good questions, excellent questions, very deep searching questions to be able to give us a bigger understanding or greater understanding of the greater reality. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for these questions. Thank you for listening to this Satsanga. I look forward to the next Satsanga, which will be on the 28th of October 2017. So God's love to you all, blessings, and namaste.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?